What's up, YouTube? Imara Ifawuyi here, coming to you live from the beautiful city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And today we're going to talk about how Brazil rewired my nervous system. Y'all, Brazil rewired my nervous system. Okay. I honestly didn't even realize how dysregulated I was and how dysregulated my nervous system was until I moved to Brazil. But it wasn't the first experience here. What I have noticed is that as I have had my third experience living in this country that has gone on for a couple of years straight, I've noticed that this energy is really noticeable in my being, and that I'm not functioning, I'm not operating the same ways that I have for, the bulk of my life. And the weird part about it is that I do live in one of the biggest cities in the world, 22 million in the city, including the inner and the outer parts of it. So you wouldn't really associate that level of healing with urban living, right? But for some reason, because of the long term stay and just the energy of Brazil in general and what this culture represents and is all about, it has allowed me to relax into my own body and to relax into myself in ways that I really never have, not even living in nature. Living in all kinds of pristine places, different parts of the world, Costa Rica, Hawaii, you know, different parts of Brazil. Just in general, this is probably the most relaxed and the most regulated I've ever been. So for me, regulation needed to come because I felt like the bulk of my life I dealt with levels of hypervigilance. Okay, so I was very hypervigilant, ready to pop off on people, short tempered. This in particular was impactful when it came to me dealing with my children. So I have learned how to parent from a softer space and to deal with myself from a softer space, which obviously impacts how I parent. Um, I was very into, being productive, getting things done, multitasking, very kind of resistant to just resting just for the sake of resting, relaxing, planning in my head. Though I did sleep a lot because of, long-term depression. Really just sitting there and resting and being at peace and in a meditation was not my thing, really. I was going. I wanted to be out. I was doing things. I was, a lot of times out in nature, having fun with people out in nature, doing different things. But what I have learned from being in Brazil is that it's not always about all of that. Sometimes it's just about grounding, quietude, even in the midst of a huge city, urban environment, and just being comfortable with yourself, basically. So a lot of people will ask, okay, well, how did you get to the point of, being so hyper vigilant, being so dysregulated, so nervous, always rushing around, always moving fast and doing things fast? And how did I get there? Well, a lot of times this level of nervous system dysregulation will come through childhood trauma. And so for me, I don't really share all of what I went through as a child on this on YouTube on this platform, but I came from like a very strangely chaotic childhood that involved, sexual abuse and trafficking and different things that were very, very heavy, very hard for me to understand as a child, and very traumatic, to the point where there are aspects of it that I don't remember fully, even though I knew the situation I was in, but there were certain aspects of it that I cut out of my memory. And to this day, even with me, utilizing plant medicine as much as I have, and doing different things, I haven't really regained access to those memories. But I will say that, sometimes, a lot of us, even though it seems really unfair that you had to suffer so much as a child when you had no real way to reconcile or to understand it or any way to really protect yourself at all, you're looking for your parents to protect you. So if they're abusing you or if they're subjecting you to craziness, it's like you feel helpless. But in saying that, a lot of times these things happen and it's kind of a setup for your life. It's something that you are going to have to learn how to heal and change and transform through. And so even though I wouldn't, ask or wouldn't wish that kind of life on anybody, I will say that it has been very pivotal in me becoming who I am. But I did have to go through a process of re-regulation, because I was very dysregulated again for most of my life, which impacted health. I still had long-term chronic health stuff that I've had to deal with. All of these things, when your system and your nervous system is like that, on flight or fight all the time, or fawn, um, it impacts your gut. It harms you, in various ways, and it can create chronic conditions that you'll have to face and deal with throughout your life until you're able to reconcile things, right? So that childhood trauma was very dominant in my youthhood, but I eventually, was able to free myself when I became a young adult through my, kind of intellect and my school capacity. I was able to go straight to college and get away from some of the toxic stuff I'd been dealing with growing up. And so Brazil, why Brazil? Why is Brazil so healing and so regulating for a lot of people? Brazil is a country that where, many people, they come and they literally just do not want to leave. It's somewhere that um, really provides people with this feeling of just being rooted, grounded in their joy, in their connection to nature and to other people, right? And so Brazil, for me, it's the different things. It's the lingering when you talk to people, the slower interactions, hanging out places, and it being okay to just hang out and talk and vibe with people for long periods. It's like they don't need a reason to get together and be with other folks. It's just what happens out here. Dancing everywhere you go, being able to dance in groups and everybody be on the same accord of joy and enjoyment of music solely. Um, you know, there's less obsession with like being efficient and optimizing things. There's less of an obsession with that. Things are more natural. They flow more natural. Um, though I live in the big city, so it's not the same experience as when you're in like the countryside of Brazil or maybe smaller cities. For sure, Brazilians are very warm. The human warmth factor is very high here. You feel like a level of humanity that you just don't experience in a lot of places, especially as a brown person, because there are places we go in the world where people just treat us like shit just based off of our skin tone. So that is a big deal here. Not to say it's not a racist country, but they have a natural tendency just to be very kind of humane in their interactions, and so you experience a lot of that on a day to day. There's music everywhere. Music is a big part of this culture, and life. Music and dance. When you talk to people, there's physical touch. A lot of times people are touching your arm. They're interacting with you in a deep, soulful way. It's not this disconnected interaction. Things are less transactional. So it's more the quality of the interaction more so than the fact that, oh, you're giving me money for something, right? So, even though, again, I am in Sao Paulo, there is just this soulful texture, emotional texture here that you feel, that you tap into. And it really is a beautiful experience to be in this country, right? say the most challenging part about this whole process of allowing myself to repair, allowing my nervous system to repair from, all of the past traumas is that, it feels uncomfortable at first, So at first, when people are staring you in your face and touching your arm while they're talking to you, it's that hypervigilance pops back out like you good? That kind of, I wasn't a mean person, but I didn't like to hug and touch that much, which are very regulating actions and things to have. Physical touch is a big part of how we regulate. I was very kind of standoffish, always have been kind of standoffish unless I knew you well. So I'm very much a one on one person that enjoys deeper bonds with people I know well. But it takes some energy to get there with me. So here in Brazil, my heart is more open. I'm flowing. I'm more talkative. I just had a whole conversation with this nice lady that lives here in my neighborhood. Super sweet. Um, for me, though, some of the interaction, particularly around the physical touch, was irritating and threw me off for a while. And I had to realize that this was part of me opening. It's part of my opening, and just realizing that my body had grown an addiction to being in stress mode, being in flight or fight, feeling like anything could happen, and I better be scanning my environment because anything could happen at any time. People are crazy. Now, I still feel like people are crazy, and I'm very watchful and head on a swivel, especially when I'm moving around where I live, even though it hasn't shown itself to be dangerous at all. But, anything can happen, right? But it's not in the same way. I spend more time feeling very safe, feeling very secure, feeling good about my children being able to maneuver and move around on their own, a feeling I did not have previously, even when I was living in the Caribbean, because I lived on an island that just happened to be a very violent island, St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And so even though you would think an island would give you some of the most rarefied, high vibes that you could get out there, I found that I was very uncomfortable with my children in that space. And that was part of the reason why we ended up moving back to Brazil. Okay. But yeah, just less grind energy. Yes, I am a working mother. I still work, but I don't grind anymore. I go through my process and then I relax and I enjoy time with my children and we get along good. And it's not this whole back and forth. And, I'm able to be a productive and good mother who nurtures my family in the way that I always wanted to, but never could really because I was needing so much nurturing myself, right? My nervous system needed so much nurturing. Okay. But so, so these are some of the things I've had to go through. Um, and, at the end of the day, I realized that my nervous system was struggling with the stillness, with the stillness of things. And that was just something I had to sit with, it was something I had to just allow. In terms of what changed in me, though, I will say, that I have undergone a transformation in my being. And that transformation, I think, can be measured through my ability to breathe deep, now, to breathe deep without it feeling strange, to move with less urgency and not feel so like I have this timeline or this thing that I've got to achieve by a certain time all the time, So just being able to be more present, less pressed, less urgent. My emotional openness is really opened up a lot. It's way more noticeable and obvious, right? I'm more creative again. I'm writing music. I've been recording. I dance all the time, sing all the time, just a lot, playing guitar, just doing the things that feed me. Those things have opened up for me again, and I'm able to write again, which I had spent some years where I wasn't able to write and create as a creative, as a singer, and as a singer songwriter. Um, my parenting style has softened. I'm much more ready, and interested in listening and not being demanding of my younger child and just being respectful, more respectful of both of my children. Because honestly, when I was dysregulated, I was like a bitch sometimes, straight up, and it just was what it was. So, and I just live softer. I don't push myself to do nothing. We haven't even really traveled since we moved back out here, not even domestically here in Brazil. I really just don't care about pushing myself to do anything unless I really feel it. So I've been having a very relaxed, peaceful life since we moved back to Brazil. My intuition is, on point. And overall, it's just like an overall amazing reconnection to my body, sensing within my body in different situations and really just connecting to myself, and that is kind of the experience that Brazil has allowed me to have. It is, I mean, I wish you could have seen the interaction I just had. The woman, she lives in my area. I haven't seen her in probably 9 months. And it's just the warmest conversations you get to have with people, the kindest conversations. They're so focused on you. It's just a different spirit. It's a different energy. Now, can I say in the US, I never had none of that? No way. There's amazing people in the US. I miss the US, believe me. The culture of the US, I do not appreciate. But in terms of individuals that I knew, there were all kinds of outliers and people who were definitely, I mean, the bulk of my peoples are in the US. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the culture of Brazil is just a different spirit, especially if you're going through a transformation, right? So I'm not saying that Brazil healed me magically. I'm not saying all of that. But I do think it interrupted some patterns that I thought in my mind were permanent, were wired in. There was something I was just going to have to live with, being this anxious, um, and definitely anxiously attached person who was, had issues in relationships because of that. Um, Moved with lots of urgency, moved with like a PTSD type of stressed energy on me. I can honestly say that a lot of that has settled down since I committed to long term here in Brazil. Because again, in the past, I'd lived here a year and a half, a couple of different times. But this time, just staying here for a block I've noticed a difference. So you have to give things time. And healing is something that you can't rush, that you can't force. I am a plant medicine practitioner, so I do utilize, ayahuasca, hape, and different I've used, obviously psilocybin, peyote, different, types of plant medicine to kind of help me to deal with a lot of the trauma that I've experienced. And so all of these have played a major part as well. And since, ayahuasca is from the Amazons and we have a lot of access to it here in Brazil, I'm able to connect with that medicine as well, which I think is also a big part of my healing process here. So overall, what I say to people is, if you're ready to slow down, to tap into joy, to experience, the slowness and calmness of life and the beautiful, rich, soulful interactions with people that you may be missing in other places, Brazil is an ideal location, especially if you're looking for somewhere to come and stay long term, to live, to move to. A lot of people are, looking for, new places to be as we watch, the United States fall from, where it thought it was to the lows that it's at right now. So, yeah, that's it. And for those who are looking to come out and potentially experience Brazil, you want to experience a tour here in Sao Paulo, we do provide art tours. We also provide relocation services and consulting and can help people. We've lived in different parts of Brazil. So if you're moving to Bahia, we can support on that process as well. And yeah, check my links below. Please put a like on the video as well. Thank you.